Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight is Tuesday. We'll be covering the Analects. We're going to try something a little bit different this evening, as we're going to go through verse by verse, as opposed to reading a group of verses together and then making comments. So we'll get started with verse 11, and then everybody feel free to make their comments, and then we'll just move on from there. We anticipate spending around 10 minutes per verse. That would give us a pretty good pace as far as getting through the Analects. But we're not going to be also rigid either. If we're having a very deep and rich conversation, then we're going to allow that to go, to continue. So as of this evening, we'll be starting on book 7, verse 11. So if I could ask Penny or James, if you wouldn't mind reading and your versions, and anybody else that would like to read their versions of the Analects, just type exclamation point in the chat and we can go from there. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. Penny, would you do the honors?
Book 7, verse 11. The master said to Wan Yuan, when called to office to undertake its duties, when not so called, to lie retired. It is only I and you who have attained to this. Zilu said, if you had the conduct of the armies of a great state, whom would you have to act with you? The master said, I would not have him to act with me who will unarmed attack a tiger or cross a river without a boat, dying without any regret. My associate must be the man who proceeds to act full of solicitude, who is fond of adjusting his plans and then carries them into execution.
Thank you so much, Penny. James, would you be interested in reading a different version?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I see the exclamation point there. Got it.
The master said of Yan Wan, when put to use, act. When discarded, hide. Only you and I are thus. Zhu said, Master, if you were put in charge of the 3 army divisions, then whom would you wish to have with you? The master said, those who fight tigers with their bare hands, wade across rivers, and are willing to die without regret, I would not want their company. I would certainly want those who approach affairs with fearful caution and who like to lay careful plans for success.
Thank you, James. So if there are no other people interested in reading their version of the Analects, we'll go to Jason.
Okay, so you can see my screen, right? Okay. So let me see this one. Okay, I think that's one of the problems here is analog. They use same person, they use the different names. So that's the big problem. So here, Yan Yuan is one person. It's Yan Hui. That's the person, the Confucius pet student. He died early, the best of the best, right? Remember, that's the Yan Yuan he's talking about. But here, Yan Yuan, but some place they call Hui. Okay, so Yan Yuan and the Yan Hui, or sometimes called Hui, okay, they are the same person. I just want to keep the same, reflect the true Chinese character, so I didn't change to Hui. Zilu, sometimes called Jilu, okay, same person. Remember the brave guy, and Confucius say he can be the military leader, okay, for the big state, okay. And when Confucius said everything is bad, that I'm going to immigrate to other country. And Yan Hui said, oh no, not Yan Hui, Zilu said, I want to go with you, right? That's the person. So that's the conversation here. Apparently, at least three people together. That's all Confucius, the first tier disciple, right? Yan Hui, Zilu, okay, and Confucius. So the master told Yan Hui that when we are employed, we act. When we are discarded, we lie in wait. Only I and you can do this. Okay, so only Yan Hui and Confucius will do that, right? If being employed, we work. If nobody employs us, we waited. Okay, so only you and I can do it. So Zilu, another student, he said, well, how about me, right? If you, master, are put in charge of military operation, and some translation will call three armies, but in Chinese, three army means the military. That means the army in front, in the middle, and in the back. So that's three armies are in the military operation. Then with whom will you go? Okay, Zilu assume, okay, he is the person because Yan Hui is not in the military. He only in the political philosophy. So Zilu assumed he is the right person to do the military with Confucius. So here's the important Confucius said. Confucius said, I don't go with those who rest her with tiger or wade across the river, okay, and die without regret. Remember, at the time they are the northern people, most of them cannot swim, so they consider wade across the river is dangerous, okay, and die without regret. If necessary, I would like to go with those who approach affairs with fearful caution and plan well through successful completion. Okay, so here reflect Confucius' conservative or cautiousness attitude to everything, right? He is thinking about on the conservative side. But another way to do it with the later chapter, you can see this chapter could be a foretell Zilu's death. Okay, I think we will read later today because Zilu later on died because his bravery or rashness. So this chapter I kind of read as foretell or a warning to Zilu's death. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So next up, we have Ahmad.
Thank you. And I love this translation that Jason gave because it's one of the clearer ones and it still stays very faithful to the original Chinese. The most intriguing part of this particular verse to me, as Jason said, it's a conversation between three characters, but you can see in reading this where these could be two totally unrelated conversations, one with Yin Hui and the other with Zulu. So why put these together? There's only a couple of possibilities to my mind. One, the three of them really had a conversation like this and somebody took the notes as best as they could to sort of capture a moment that was profound for one of those three figures, if not all three. Or two, they're trying to communicate something between the difference in Confucius' dialogue with his pet student Yin Hui, where he says, the things we do together, when we are employed, we will act. When we are discarded, we lie in wait. You and I are the only ones capable of this. This is a comparison of peers, of people who are acting in a similar way. And then the conversation with Zulu is a conversation about hypotheticals and speculation, but it doesn't pit them together as equals in ideas and actions. And like Jason says, it does kind of portend Zulu's demise in the future, but it also imparts a lesson again compared to that lie in wait when you are discarded. If you're put in charge of the military, who would you go with? And he says immediately, not anyone who would wrestle tigers or wade across rivers, no one who would die without regret. It's interesting to think that he could be talking about Zulu there as a man who would wrestle tigers, wade across rivers, and someone who would die without regrets. Because to Confucius' mind, there should be regret. Regret that there wasn't more time, regret that you didn't learn the one more thing or plumb the next depth. And since both of these figures are destined to die, Zulu and Yanhui, it just strikes me as a very interesting juxtaposition of a conversation between seemingly desperate ideas that I'm still wrestling with. How do they tie together, really well? I can see a lot of angles and a lot of speculation, but this is one that could be deeply, deeply read a few times.
Thank you for that, Aman. Quan, do you have any comments?
Yes. Do you guys hear me? Because at the beginning I had problems to hear you guys. Okay.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. So I would say that this section is very representative of two Chinese ideals. The second paragraph about Zulu is a description, a not complimentary description with what the Chinese call a wu fu. Okay, a wu fu means a military man. But in that expression, a wu fu, it also means someone who doesn't think or reflect very deeply before he acts.
Okay.
And it's the opposition between the wu fu and the van ran. The van ran, the first level of meaning of a van ran is a literati, okay, literatus man. But at the deeper level, it also means someone who reflects deeply before he acts, taking into account all the possible consequences of an act, especially if it's a decision that would involve many people and not only you. And here we are speaking of an army, so it involves necessarily many people. The other Chinese ideal is in the first chapter, the first 5 or 6 lines, the first 3 lines, I'm sorry. It's the idea that the sage, or at least the gentleman, is in contact with his deep nature, and because that his true identity is his deep nature, when he is conferred a governmental position or a position in life, any position in life, he will strive to perform at a high level. But if the boss is not happy with him, he should be capable to retreat graciously and still keep his deep nature. Okay, so or it can also be the case of a good government that you should serve, and a bad government that you should not serve, and know how to retreat graciously. Either you are dismissed, or you think that it's not virtuous to keep on serving that government.
Thank you, Juan. I don't see anybody else please type explanation in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom, and I will call on you. Go ahead, Mark, and then I'll follow up with some of the comments at James next as well. I'll give everybody else a priority.
Thank you, Joseph.
Sure.
And everyone for that really wonderful set of comments from everybody. I really was wondering about the translation of some of the different translations that we looked at, including Jason's, in the sense that really 2 points. The first is about the syntax in the, I guess it would be the master's reply, I would not want by my side the kind of person, you know, with the tiger and the river and so on.
Mhm.
Two, I believe two of the three we heard, including Jason's, has the translation, and I'm sorry, I don't know the original because I don't really know any of the early Chinese. I would not do X. But in one of the translations, I think it was possibly Penny, the one Penny read, it was this whole long list of things that was said. And then at the end, I would not do this. So there's almost like a surprise there. So I was wondering how the original really tries to portray this. Does he say up front, I would not do everything I'm about to list? Or does he list a whole bunch of things and then says, those I would not have as my aid? And the other thing was about the translations of the two sort of final points in this whole conversation. And I appreciate Amin's comment about what is the relationship here? You know, was it really a conversation between the three? Why are they being just juxtaposed? And some really interesting ideas emerged about that. My question is about how to translate what Jason's called fearful caution and planning well. So there seems to be two concepts at the end, maybe even four. There's the fearfulness, there's the caution, there's the planning, and then there's the well executing, or the sort of the adverb that we would say well. So those, and there were the other translations involved things like adjusting. This was, I think, in Penny's, adjusting his place, and something about executing. And James, I couldn't catch what the translation was in the one James read, but those were my questions. Thank you.
Jason, would you like, actually, I know that we
Okay,
have
so
James and
I think I can
Yeah.
make it a very specific answer on this one. Okay, thank you, Mark, asked such a, how do I say it? It's a
specific.
very, oh, sorry, okay, sorry, I think I go to the wrong screen. Just 1 minute, let me go to the screen. Since Mark asked such a specific question, then
Sure.
let me see. You see the right screen?
No.
So it's a Lake Tahoe receipt.
You know where I'm going to. So I let them, James, you make a comment first. Let me fix my. I don't want to see you my financial report or something. Okay, I got it. Okay, so that's the right thing, right? You
It's
don't see my
full
email.
disclosure here. So
Okay, that's the full closure. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's get on that. So first question, very good question. Okay, is that the first or last? It's last because it said fighting the tiger, cross the river, death, no grant. I'm not going with. Okay, so that's answer Mark's question. He put on the desk. This thing on desk. Second question. Okay, this is about two things. Okay, I try to translate the word by word. Here, these two must 临事而惧. Okay, that means approach, affair, fearful. Okay, second one 好谋而成. Okay, that means plan well. Well means how. Okay, 谋 plan. Okay, and way to the successful. Okay, so I will go with this kind of people. So that's exactly, I almost to word translate. So that's it.
and my translation is almost identical to yours, Jason, as well. So if you go word by word, I think that that's an accurate way of actually looking at it. So thank you, James.
I was just going to make the comment that sometimes we've run into these before, where there's one number that seems to contain two different conversations in it that
Right.
are not exactly the same theme, and they're just stuck together for some arbitrary reason. So I think that might be the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's being said. I mean, for me, I focused on specifically what Aman had actually captured is this idea of regret, is that you absolutely should, the way Confucius would look at it is that you should have regret. You should not act recklessly, and that you should actually always be wanting to learn more, or wanting to live. So that was the main thing that I had taken away from that. I had some thoughts about, actually, no, that was another one that I was looking at. It had to do with bravery, but anyway, if there are no other comments with number 11, why don't we go ahead and read number 12?
Book 7, verse 12. The master said, if the search for riches is sure to be successful, though I should become a groom with whip in hand to get them, I would do so. As the search may not be successful, I will follow after that which I love.
Thank you, Penny. James.
Okay, number 12. The master said, if wealth may be well sought, though it be as lowly bearer of the whip, I too would pursue it. If it cannot be well sought, I will follow what I love.
I'm actually just going to go ahead and read my translation briefly as well, just because it is very close to James's. It's the master said, when wealth can be pursued, I will take even the position of whip holding official. When it cannot be pursued, I will follow what I love. So, and I'm reading a translation by Hung Yong Kim. So, anyway, it was the one that Will would read.
My heart is cut in pieces. The devil is taking over.
Forgive me for having made that mistake and letting Baron in. So, yes. So why don't we please go to Jason's translation?
Okay, this one. I think this one. I think all three translation we talk about. It's about pursue, well sought. Okay, searching. Okay, that's this word called 求. And Aman and I have a little bit disagree on this word. And this word on the surface means pursue, well sought. That's correct. But I will let Aman explain. But my understanding is that means the environmental, the situation is possible. That's why I translate as possible. Okay, so that's what I think. The master said, if seeking wealth is possible, I will pursue the lowly job as a whip bearer. Okay, whip bearer basics kind of like security guard. Okay, this kind of person. Okay. If not possible, I will do what I like to do. So I think the situation is basically probably somebody asking Confucius, oh, why don't you get a job, right? Something like this. Okay. So he probably out of job at this time. So he talked about if I have the job possible, because I assume he can get a job, any job that he want. Okay, I assume. And then he just be picky. He only do the job with fit his idea. So something with人, so he will do it. That's why I think the word 求, pursue, I think probably means allow me to pursue, not means I'm pursuing. So that's I'm thinking, you know. And then this one is related to, I think, the 716 and also related to 4.5. Okay, when I think in 4.5 they also talking about the pursuing wealth and the nobility, and you should not violate with 人. Okay, so that's why I think in this way. Yeah, thank you.
You said 716 and 4.5.
Yeah, and the 4.5 also talk the similar thing, and 716 also talk about kind of the same situation. His attitude toward the wealth and the nobility, and what kind of job I need to pursue, what kind of job I should not pursue. Okay, or even I have a chance, I will not do it.
Yeah, that's something I want to focus on, is kind of cross-referencing as much as possible as we continue to go through this. That actually allows me to make the connections that I need and see what Confucius is really saying and when he's repeating himself, because there's a lot of overlap in what he says. Aman, please.
Yeah. Jason and I actually don't disagree as much as I think it appears. His choice to translate "could" as possible is very accurate. It's in fact it does capture what that word means about it being a situation where one is capable. But James's translation, I thought, did a good job in capturing sort of the subtext that is when it is not only the situation makes it possible for somebody to do something capable of it, but it is allowable or approvable or to be a worthy pursuit.
Right.
And that was the only reason I was hunting for another word option to try and bring that subtext out of what was communicated there. Because what Confucius is saying in this chapter isn't so much I can't possibly find a job. It's just there aren't any available. It's not that it is impossible for him to find employment. It's that it's not desirable because he will not compromise his own character to simply gain employment, to gain some sort of regular paycheck, which is an admirable character trait. But it seems that this could be read as this is just, an economic depression where there are no jobs available for him to take. And that's not at all the case. If it were approvable, if it were acceptable, if the environment was one where not only was he capable, but it was allowable to him for him to pursue employment, he would even take the lowliest of jobs. When it's not acceptable, then to hell with getting a paycheck. Do what you love, do what it is you want, pursue what it is that actually makes you the better person that he has constantly reiterated to his students should be their primary pursuit in life. So like I said, I don't think we disagree as much as Jason may think. I think, possible is the proper way to translate could, but I also think that it may lose something in that faithful translation of what the subtext is. And I thought James's translation, though I can't remember it verbatim, did a really good job teasing out that specific quality.
Yeah, my interpretation is actually very similar to Aman's on this one, is that Confucius had no interest in wealth for the sake of that, just for if it couldn't be attained through legitimate means. In other words, that it was maintaining his integrity. And he's actually critical of people throughout the Analects that who have attained wealth through illegitimate means. So, I mean, it's this idea that it's not just that you want to maintain your character if you're pursuing something in pursuit of any type of job or position, not just take any job that comes along. That was my interpretation. James.
Yeah, I liked what you just said, Amon, about the text. It's the subjunctive mood that's used. If wealth may be well sought, even though as the lowly bearer of the whip, I too would pursue it. And then there's the negative subjunctive. If it cannot be well sought,
Right.
I will follow what I love. So the alternative. So the experienced poet here in Richard Eno, in the Richard Eno translation.
I think that's an excellent clarification, Mark.
Thanks, Joseph. I was just wondering if there was a possible connection. I know that Ammon was talking about moving the idea of what was just possible to whether it was actually appropriate or not. And I'm looking at the Slingerland translation. I don't know if that's something that anyone has used before, but he brings that out explicitly by saying worth pursuing. And this made me think about the relationship between 11 and 12 in a sense, because if 11 is about when to pursue something and when not to, when to try to cross the river, when not to, when to try to fight off the lion, when not to, then maybe 12 is also saying something about when one should pursue wealth, which I think was also said.
But they may be slightly different, I think, in the sense, and this is just thinking this out loud. You're right in that they both require good judgment, but one is in judgment of acting wisely in order to stay alive, whereas one is more acting wisely in order to maintain your character. And I think there's a slight distinction there, but feel free if anybody has any other thoughts on that. I see that Penny O'Brien has typed exclamation point.
Yeah, I just had a thought. I mean, if you could translate it to, mine says if wealth may be well sought, but I was thinking if wealth could be well sought, in the could itself, it would be saying it's impossible to do that. But if it could be well sought, is that basically the idea they're conveying?
That I'm going to defer to either Amon on that one.
Yeah, let Amon say it. Yeah.
Thank you. I expect to be sort of closing up. So if anyone else had anything else to contribute, please put up a hand and make me shut up. But I wanted to address both what Penny was just asking and what Mark had brought up about this idea of a comparison of when one ought to do X. And Joe, you're right when you say that one speaks more to survival and the other about character, but they both are about the character of the person who would do X. So one who would rush into has something characteristically incongruent with a person who pursues Ren. I won't say they're morally bankrupt or anything like that. They just have more polishing and grinding to do to make them make their character somebody who is more in line with someone who is putting the pursuit of Ren as foremost. And in this chapter, there is something about the person who will take the position even when it is not an auspicious environment in which to do so. And this chapter, I don't think, is as difficult for us to understand. It's basically there are ways to pursue a career that either compromise your moral character, or there are ways not to. And what he is saying is, if there is a way not to compromise your moral character, whether it means then go ahead and pursue wealth, or no, you must be impoverished, either is perfectly acceptable, and either is commensurate with the character of a person who has made the pursuit of Ren foremost in their mind. And I wanted to compliment Mark for reading Professor Slingerland's copy. He's quite the man. I got a chance to meet him, and it's probably a great translation. Most of his works are. That's just my editorial.
Thank
Let me
Sure, please.
add
Jason.
something. Yeah, I think that when I read this one, okay, always, okay, not just today. When I was young, I read this one. I always amazed, not by the pursuing words. I'm always on the last two sentences. Okay, if not possible, I will do what I would like to do. Okay, so I really like this part. It seems like not everybody focus on the last part, because I think the last part to me is important, because since I have no job, so I can do whatever I want to do. So
I guess my question is that same word being used in both parts? Because I think one pronunciation I heard was ku and the other was shi. I'm not sure if you're talking, I think you're talking about the same
yeah,
word.
same word.
So it's the same word in both parts of the, yeah.
Okay. Quan, thank you for the
Uh,
clarification.
I would like to push a little bit about Jason's comments, okay? Because that's true that most people would not stress on the last two lines, and I think Jason is right to draw our attentions on those words, okay? So I just want to repeat them. If it cannot be when sought, I wouldn't follow what I love. Because let's not forget that in the classical Chinese or the traditional Chinese education, what is promoted is that you have to cultivate yourself, to serve your family, the state, and to bring peace to the world. So you have a certain heaviness of duty put on you, okay, since childhood, especially if you're born in an educated family. So those two lines are very important if you take into account all the playwrights, the novels writers in Chinese history, the poets, the musicians, the actors, all those people who achieve their life in something else than serving the government or being a teacher of Confucianism. And I would say that those two lines liberated a lot of people psychologically speaking in China and in Eastern Asia since the last 2,000 years. Maybe a little bit far-fetched, but that's my 2 cents on those two lines.
I think that's a reasonable interpretation, actually. If I'm reading, when it cannot be pursued, I will follow what I love. I mean, that is kind of reasonable, that what you're saying. This idea of duty being sufficient. Mark.
I'm sorry for asking such a small point as this, but I noticed that both like and love showed up among the translations. And English can be such a vague language sometimes, but one of the things that we usually think, not necessarily, is that love is stronger than like. So I'm just wondering what people's thoughts are on this, and what the original might be here.
Okay, let me quickly answer this one. Among, I would like to hear how you think. Okay, this word also, because the word is how. Okay, and the reader is how. So in my translation, usually I translate as love. Okay, but here I think, because I love to do, I think it's a little bit too strong. At least that's my opinion. And sometimes he say 好学, that means how study. Learn, right? I translate it as eager, okay? Eager to learn, okay? So I try to be consistent, but I find out this word is difficult for me. That's just my opinion. I still try to collect all kind of feedback, and I can improve. So
I'll be as terse as possible. Hao is one of the Chinese words that I love discussing because it flies in the face of so much of that sort of Western pursuit of discussion of the good. We try to understand the good. This is all the way back to Plato. And I've always said, if the Western languages, instead of being phonetic logarithms, were these pictographic, metaphoric, captured ideas, we'd have never had a Plato, because there would have never been an argument about what good was. Good is that. There's the character in the chat. How is good, and it's made up of two parts: woman and child, mother and child. That's as good as it gets. To that mind, how it's actually used in common language, Jason makes a good point. It becomes a vagary in common language because it's attached to so many things. So if you want to say something's delicious, you say 好吃, good, eat. If you want to say something is, the list goes on and on. You can add good to something to create a different sort of adjective. So when Confucius says, I will pursue what is good, I mean, Plato would have had a field day with this notion, but really colloquially what he was saying, I'll pursue something that I like. And I don't think love is necessarily too strong, though we do have better Chinese words to directly translate as love, I being the foremost obvious option. So I liked Jason's translation of I'll do what I like, because it gets this idea of pursue good without it turning into some very platonic existential dilemma.
I think that that's actually desirable, because then it doesn't lead to too much debate as to what is good. But Ren does, to a certain extent. So I mean, we don't get away with everything. Brian.
So I've been listening, and I guess I could get at my question in a couple of ways, but one is, do you all think that the translation from Legge is wrong? Because he said, if the search for riches is sure to be successful, then I will pursue them. But I don't hear anybody, it's not successful, it's possible or appropriate.
So if I can tackle this, I don't think it's
Please.
wrong. I think it's antiquated. Legge is a translator from the 19th century. And so his first attempt to change classic Chinese text into English, he was writing for an English aristocratic audience. And as Jason has pointed out, it is impossible to remove your bias entirely from the process of translation. So what Legge did is monumental, and any scholar worth his salt respects the Legge translation, but it is of a time and of a place, and has been it's been shown to be somewhat dated, especially in some of these ideas that would, you know, bolster the idea of, sure, we can float a gunship up the Yangtze River. There's nothing wrong with that because pursuing success is just fine in the English eyes.
James.
Yeah, I see the translation by Eno the same. It's a matter of priorities. If one has his mind focused on wealth because for a good reason, if in the translation it's if wealth may well be sought. So if one is focused on accumulation of wealth, then even a job that is lowly, a job that is beneath me, I might do that job. But if there's a problem, you know, with pursuing that kind of employment, I'll do whatever I desire the most. So I think there is the idea, I think, of priority here. You know, there is the idea that what one chooses as a priority in this case, which is the possibility of wealth, if that for some reason is not a good focus. In other words, if that could not be well sought, then love enters the equation. So, I think that's the way a lot of people think about their careers. They don't just pursue the paycheck. They do their career planning from the standpoint of being able to tolerate the daily grind, so to speak. So regardless of whether they're a teacher like Confucius or a doctor, engineer, writer, whatever. So I think it is conditional, and it's conditional on one's ultimate goals, whether wealth enters into the picture or not.
But yeah, wealth can't be the main goal, though. In Confucius.
Why do you say that?
I was just thinking in the sense that given how he's critical of other individuals who pursue wealth.
Which
over,
ones? Which ones?
Other, I don't have them listed down. Other families.
Oh, okay.
But I will get.
He usually I've seen him attack families because of their acts, not because of their wealth. Also, yeah, and also by their imprudence. In other words, somebody getting too much wealth and not using it appropriately. In other words, somebody who is the director, what do you call it, the governor of a province, for example.
Not behaving appropriately.
Exactly.
Given
but
their
not
position.
not for having the wealth, and not for being the one who sought after the wealth originally. So I just want, that's why I wanted your examples. I'm just clarifying. That's why I want, you to be clear.
No, that's a good.
Why should we believe this about Confucius, that he's anti-wealth?
I think, James, it's got to be properly earned. I started just butting here. So Confucius made it very clear that if you have ill-gotten wealth, that is much, much worse than being poor, right? And especially if you're in a society where the society is managed terribly and everybody's poor and you're wealthy, that is considered a tremendous disgrace on you. He is very much in the same attitude as Seneca. He's not against wealth, but it had to be properly gained. Yeah. So you can make a general statement that all wealth is good. That is 100% not what he said. I don't think that's what you're saying either. You probably just phrased it wrong. Yeah.
Well, maybe to you I did. I would ask you the same kind of question, though. I'd ask you, where does he say that he is specifically against improperly acquired wealth. Because what I noticed is that there are some verses that I liked quite a bit that spoke about using wealth inappropriately or giving wealth where it was not well deserved.
Or
So
attaining
once again,
wealth.
I'd ask if we're going to say, well, Confucius is just like Seneca, let's document that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, but
that's-
Seneca says something very, I don't want to go back. Seneca says something very similar. Seneca also does not approve of, bribery and assassinations and just like, a ill-gotten wealth. He had, in that way, they're similar. He does not approve all wealth is good, right? He just doesn't both of them doesn't brand wealth in itself as evil, but how you getting it. I have read, I'm not kind of like Jason, I read these things a long time ago. I do remember a statement, if I loosely translate it, it would be something similar like, in a society that's poorly governed, great wealth is something to be ashamed of instead of to be proud of. If I remember I'm remembering Chinese, so like I'm trying to think, if I translate, there was something translated like that. Yeah, that's actually in his writing.
And there are examples of that where he's actually criticizing dynasties that are actually falling apart based on the loss of what he would consider to be, or even ill-gotten wealth in those particular instances.
Okay,
saw
this is book 8:13. Okay, book 8:13. Okay, what Chris talked about book 8, chapter 13. He talked about if the government is under doubt. Okay, which is right. If you are rich and noble, you should be shamed. Okay, and then so if the state is in the doubt, it means a good governed state. Okay, and if you are poor, okay, and lowly, you should be shamed. Okay, so that's what he said, word by word. But we can wait on the book 8. It's coming next month.
Quan, and then we'll move on to the next verse.
Yeah, I will be brief. Money is probably one of the deepest stuff in our life. Okay, especially in a philosophy, when one of the statement is that you have to take care of your family. So wealth, Confucius and Confucianism is not against money or wealth, that's for sure. Okay, but if you have to take care of your family, but at the same time you love music, or you love reading, or you love doing stuff that will not let you have time to make more money, what would you choose? Okay, so I would say that why I started my command by the fact that money is a very deep thing, because it's the universal mean of exchange, and time is money. And it's true,
Right.
even if it's an Anglo-Saxon statement and not a Chinese statement, but I think it's a universal statement. So to make money, you need to make an effort. That effort, will that effort go into money making, even if it's for noble reason, like taking care of your family, or you would put your energy and effort in something for which you have a passion for. Okay, so I come back a little bit to what I said maybe 15 minutes ago. Confucianism, on the surface, it's a doctrine for the state and for the society, but at the same time, it's also be understood as a doctrine for very individualistic people.
Thank you for
We will
that.
talk about money in the next 2 chapters, so don't worry.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
So
that's
why don't we-
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
big topic, money.
So why don't we actually go ahead and start with the next 2 chapters. Penny, would you like to read verse 13?
Okay. The things in reference to which the master exercised the greatest caution were fasting, war, and sickness.
I'll go right on.
Yes,
Mine's
please.
about the same.
Yeah.
Uh,
mine's very
things,
similar.
things the master was vigilant about: fasting, war, illness.
And mine is very similar. The matters that the master exercised care over were staying calm for purification, war, and sickness.
Yeah, I think this one should be Google translation should work. So only question is this: why he put the fasting, warfare, and the illness together, right? What's common in these three things? Why he put these three things randomly, right? So I just like to point out is these three things you have to have the attitude of awe and reverence, right? Because fasting, because you have the worship, big ceremony you are doing, and warfare, of course, you need to deal with that. You should not wage a war lightly. And the illness, I think he means like plague or something like this, right? COVID, this kind of thing. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. One explanation that I had read was very similar to yours, Jason. Oh, go ahead, Amon.
Oh no, that's fine. Go right ahead.
It was just when the time to offer a sacrifice has come, one brings his thoughts into alignment so as to communicate brilliantly with the mysterious beings. So just a form of sacrifice is kind of what I've taken away from this particular verse.
I think the other connection between these three is that they are consequential. Whether you're talking about fasting or you're talking about warfare or you're talking about illness, you're talking about things that undertaken without great forethought and not managed well have dire consequences to an individual, to a family, to a nation. And I think there's actually that progression between fasting. If you are fasting because you're dedicated to something, but you overdo it and then you can't feed yourself, you may starve yourself to death. That will affect you. Well, warfare can affect the state or the kingdom in question and have grave repercussions for the at least two states involved. Illness can be, as we've seen, a pandemic. It can have consequences that reach global sort of ramifications. And so putting these three together, I think actually does make sense. And saying that he exercised great caution in these matters speaks to the fact that Confucius was thoughtful about how consequential each could be in its own regard, but also in a broader regard.
I like that as well, as that it's, I know Jason has things that the master exercises the greatest caution are in our fasting and all, but this also in my translation it talked about staying calm for purification purposes, but staying calm actually is something that is consistent between all three of these last three verses.
And I would say it's not incommensurate with the idea of caution. To
Right.
be cautious, you must have your wits about you. You must stay calm.
Exactly. So that makes perfect sense. So
Oh, yeah, probably have to be against on the word purification. I think it's too Western thinking. Okay, that's just my opinion because I just look at the text. I think purification probably too Western idea, Christian idea, I think. Yeah, but just my thought. That's why I didn't bring this one in.
I would agree with I
Okay,
would
good.
agree with Jason because fasting is something undertaken for purification, most commonly in the Western thought, though there were ritual reasons for fasting in ancient China that would not necessarily deal with purification, but would deal with propriety. And we saw that before in when we were talking about mourning, that one didn't eat, that he didn't eat his fill. It might be expected that one were to fast, not to eat while in a state of mourning, or there are other reasons why one might be fasting than purification.
Yeah, and Chinese fasting could be different. You know, you can eat, but probably not meat, including no music. Take bath. Okay, that's also you need to take a bath. Okay, so that the fasting, the word is not really fasting. The word is 斋. Okay, okay. So that word we translate as fasting, but technically. Another way to call it vegetarian. Okay, that's another way to call for the vegetarian food. We will call 斋. Okay, so
Mark, go ahead. Actually, I wish I had access to the character that they're using in order what they're calling staying calm, because it does, yeah, just so that you guys could see that, but that's okay.
Thanks. I was wondering, it was really fascinating how he's contrasting fasting, war, and illness, and as was said, the import of each one of these and how consequential they can be, and even the relationship between them, as was indicated. I was also thinking that fasting is something which possibly we would choose, and maybe even everyone would choose it at a certain time, at the appropriate time. War is something that only we would choose in very limited circumstances. And illness, I'm not sure that we would ever choose. I was just wondering about how these could be contrasted in terms of intentionality.
I can only comment as to the way we would handle them, not necessarily the events themselves. Anybody else have any comments for Mark?
I do. I think,
Okay.
whether we have agency or not is a variable. So you're right that with war, we don't feel like we have very much agency. We feel like, well, the war happens, and if we're lucky, it won't happen here, right? Or I won't have to serve, give my life, and so forth. And then, but in an illness, you know, I hope nobody in my family gets sick. It's pretty clear. And we don't have very much agency other than we dress warmly and eat the right kinds of foods and so forth. And then with the purification rituals, maybe you come from a good family and you'll lose face in your family if you don't follow the purification rituals. You know, because you're it's like this whole idea of like mourning your parents for 3 years if they die, that idea, right? So yeah, so there are times when you don't have agency, even in things that we would normally think about having agency in, like fasting. And of course it is, I mean, I know people that fast as a political, I mean, you know, we know of people that fast as a political statement.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like voluntary. But if it's part of the ritual, if it's part of Li, then maybe something you want to, that you would have to watch out for. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily, you would be vigilant about it, like Confucius says in my translation.
Quan.
Yeah, I might have a suggestion for chai because what Jason said for chai is very right. Okay, the first translation would be fasting, but maybe observance because I thought two precepts, but there's a Chinese word for precept which is 戒. So I would not translate the chai as precept, but as ritual observance rather than to focus on the idea of fasting.
Thank you, Quan. I think that's a good word. Yeah.
Thanks.
So with that, why don't we go ahead and move on to number 14.
Verse 14. When the master was in Qi, he heard the shuao, and for 3 months did not know the taste of flesh. I did not think, he said, that music could have been made so excellent as this.
Okay, 7:14. When the
Yes.
master was in the state of Qi, he heard the Shao music. For 3 months, he did not know the taste of meat. He said, I never imagined that this making of music could reach this level.
My translation is literally identical to that. So, I'm not gonna just go ahead and read it because that is it. I mean, there is one word that's a little bit different, but he said, I never imagined that creating music could reach this level. So, anyway, Jason, would you like to get yours?
Okay, so for the people who interested in Chinese character, you will see this one, fasting, okay? It's same as this word, okay? Qi, okay? So actually it's the same writing, but a different pronunciation, because this one is different, means even the same words here, that's the challenge. Here means fasting, and here is the name of the state. We call qi, this one called zai, okay? That's the some part if you're interested in Chinese character. That's the some of the challenge here. So here it said, okay, in the state of Qi, okay, I think Confucius, Qi and the Confucius homestay Lu had a war when the Confucius was older, right? If you watch the movie, okay, that movie Quan recommend that the war with Qi, okay, but when Confucius was, I think around 30, 40, okay, at 30, 40, he went to Qi to looking for job, but he not got hired. Okay, so I think this one means it's talking about before when Confucius was younger. Okay, I think. Okay, so in the state of Qi, the master heard the music of Shao. Okay, I will refer to the chapter 3, book 325. Okay, Confucius talked about the Shao is the music composed by the ancient sage king Yao. Okay, he said it's the Shao is thoroughly beautiful and thoroughly good. Okay, so that's how good of this because the better virtue you have, the better music you probably will produce. Probably that's the idea. So he master heard the music of Shao and didn't know the taste of meat for 3 months. Oh, I forget the 3 months. Okay, so for 3 months, so Confucius must like to eat meat. So he even cannot taste the meat because he keep hearing the music. So he said, I never imagined music could reach this level. Yeah, that's he talking about. Confucius really like music. I think we probably read a lot, and he talk about it. He like to sing. I think that time he talked about he like to sing. Okay.
Thank you. Aman.
Yeah, the translations you see, they're all very close. One thing I would add, anything to hearing the music of Shao, which were supposed to be composed by the sage King Yao, is that we know music is not just a nicety. Music has a effect on people's minds and imparts lessons. We most of us can probably still remember the jingles of our childhood from advertisers because they're orchestrated and engineered to worm their way into your minds and stay there forever. It's been documented that people in late cognitive decline or, you know, late stage Alzheimer's may forget everything, but music stays with them longer and lasts longer in the recesses of their mind. So it wasn't just hearing music for the music's sake. It was music that was conveying something of worth that would be worthy of having it retained in your mind forever. And nothing could reach that sort of high level pinnacle as much as music composed by the sage King Yao. It is interesting that this music was heard in the state of Qi, which was the rival to Confucius' own state of Lu. And bearing in mind that the Analects would have been composed long after Confucius's life, there's a subtext here of these weren't, although they were rivals, it's not that there was an evil state next door and a bastion of virtue in his home state of Lu, though Confucius did have nothing but glowing, you know, accolades for his own home state of Lu. He heard something good in a warring people, in another people, in a differing people. And I think the sort of tacit message is there is something good to be found in all of our neighbors if you know where and when to look/listen for them. That's not explicit in this text, but knowing the history, knowing when it would be written afterwards, and knowing that it came with a unified China or the unification of China, it makes sense that that subtext would be worked into this little passage.
Thank you, Aman. Would anybody else like to comment on verse 14? Mark?
I was just wondering
Maybe.
about, thanks. I was just wondering about the last idea of reaching a certain level. I don't remember what Jason's translation was. Maybe that was it. Or sublime is Slingerland. And if you could maybe just say something about that type of character.
Right, kind of what I said before, but I'll say it slightly different. The idea that something was transmitted from one of the greatest minds down the ages through to this people, and him hearing it, heard that ancient voice, that wisdom come through, be imparted in the music and the lyrics and the song, all would leave Confucius in this sort of awestruck state. It would be akin to hearing, I'm trying to think of a really good equivalency, but maybe the Easter Day papal mass from the Pope Innocent III. You would be hearing something that was so true to place and time and so elevated from the environment you lived in the here and now that it would leave you sort of thunderstruck like that for months.
Okay, yeah, and you're indicating that it's something that would shape the character in a way that would make it worthwhile.
That would make sense. I don't know if it would make it worthwhile, but it would shape the character of the individual, would it?
Yeah, I think if you were open to it, you would get the message, as it were.
Right, exactly. And I think that message would stay and resonate with you.
Mhm.
which is actually interesting to think about, considering how music played a role when we were just talking about it last week. Even when is it appropriate to play certain music? And it was, I believe, after a funeral. We were talking about it anyway. Jason.
Let me talk a little bit here. I think the singing and music could mean different things. Okay, I think I can talk about this one later when we talk about Confucius singing. Okay, so just back to the subject. I think Confucius believed the music will educate people. So when he talk about a state called 正, and he really doesn't like this music. Okay, so he think this music is reflect the people and also a bad influence on that. So I think we will have a chance to talk about this. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making that note. So with that, if there are no other comments, then we will move on to verse 15.
Oh, 15. Ran Yu said, "Is our master for the ruler of Wei?" Zigong said, "Oh, I will ask him." He went in accordingly and said, "What sort of men were Bo Yi and Su Chi?" "They were ancient worthies," said the master. "Did they have any repinings because of their course?" The master again replied, "They sought to act virtuously, and they did so. What was there for them to repine about?" On this, Zigong went out and said, "Our master is not for him."
Thank you for that, Penny. James, would you like to read yours?
All right, 15. Ran Yu said, "Will the master become a partisan on behalf of the rulers of Wei?" Zigong said, "Right, I'll ask him." He entered and said to the master, "What sort of men were Bo Yi and Shu Qi?" "They were worthies of ancient times." "Did they harbor complaints?" "They sought Ren and gained Ren." "What complaints could they have?" Shigong exited. "The master will not be a partisan in this," he said. Sorry.
I like that translation. That seems to be the most clear. The only difference between, they're very similar to mine, where it says instead of, it talks about, did they bear any grudges? The master replied again, they sought humanity and attained humanity, which is Ren, as we've talked about in the past. What grudges did they bear after coming out? Zigong said, our master will not. So it's very similar to your translation, just a little bit different with the word grudges and complaints being some of the differences, and that's all. Anyway, Jason.
Yeah, I believe this one is one of the difficult one. Okay, so first the two person. Okay, Ran You. Okay, is the one manage the money, and Confucius said he is good. Okay, he want to give more money. Okay, to the person. Okay, so he's a financial guy, and then Confucius also said he is good in administration. Okay. And Zigong is another person good in the literature. Okay, so that's why Ran You have a question, and ask Zigong to ask. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the situation is just like the soap opera we read before, right? When Confucius went to visit the Duchess Nan, okay, the beauty, okay, 子路 got angry on that. So Confucius, if you watch that soap opera, okay, Confucius stayed in that state for a long time. He had been well treated. Okay, so that's the situation. And this situation happened after the end of the movie. If you remember the movie, that beauty got killed, right? I don't know if she died or not died, okay? But basics, the beauty and then I think it's her husband is very old, probably dead already, I don't know. But the son, which is the husband's son, I think the eldest son is Peng Kui, right? Peng Kui, okay. Peng Kui tried to assassinate Nan Zi, the Duke Nan, the lady, but he failed. So he had to escape. So when he escaped, there's no kid. So basically his son, okay, become the king. So he become the duke, right? So he become the duke. So when Peng Kui, after the failed assassination, right, he escaped to the state of Jin. Jin is a large state. So Jin helped Peng Kui going back to reclaim the throne from his son. Okay, so this one is a very weird situation, right? The father bring the foreign force back to the state to claim the throne from the son. Okay, so that's the situation happened in the state of Wei. So if you think of this situation as a Confucius, that's a very difficult dilemma, the paradox to test Confucius' wisdom. How are you going to work on your moral, right? The son should respect the father, but the son is the Lord, and your father come back to, to reclaim the throne from your son. Okay, you guys supposed to love each other. So which side you are going to stay? That's Ranyo's question, right? So Ranyo said, is our master helping the ruler of the Wei to defend his father? Okay, so that's a tough question. Nobody dare to ask. Confucius must close the door in his room, contemplating, or he doesn't know what to do. Okay, so Zigong said, well, let me ask. Okay, so he entered Confucius' room and asked. So Zigong is a smart person, right? He doesn't directly ask, then Confucius will probably get mad. So he asked the question, what kind of men were Bo Yi and Su Qi? Okay, these two persons you will see, I make a count 5-6 times in the Analects. Okay, Confucius constantly talk about these two persons. This two person was 500 years before Confucius' time. So the situation is their state is so-called Guzhu, the state of Guzhu. Bo Yi, if you see the name Bo, means he is the oldest son, the eldest son. So their father want to give the throne to the third son, Su Qi. Okay, so Bo Yi, he is the crown prince. So he doesn't want to make the situation difficult. So he escaped to the mountain, okay, hide it, okay. So make his father's job easier to give the throne to his younger brother. But the younger brother, Su Qi, think that was wrong because the throne should give to his elder brother. So he also escaped, run away. So that's why Zigong asked this question. What kind of men were Bo Yi and Su Qi? Confucius said, they were warrior men of ancient. Okay, Ranyo was smart. He said, do they have any resentment? Okay, so they lost their thrones, right? And later on, they starved to death because after the revolution, they died. Okay, both are starved to death. So Confucius said, they pursue Ren and attend Ren. What kind of resentment did they have? So Zigong come out and said, our master is not going to help. So that's the translation I had to make. I hope may make it clear. And I have my own comment. I will make sure everyone understand the background and the story 伯夷叔齐 bring up, and then Confucius decision.
And the story that you're kind of referencing is in 628 or 627, depending on your translation. That you're.
You mean the 伯夷叔齐?
Yeah.
It should be happen before Duke Zhou. Okay, so I don't know exactly the time. Queen probably know better. Okay, so it probably 500 years before Confucius, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Minimum.
Minimum 500 years, a long time ago, because
Yeah.
it happened before Duke Zhou. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Duke Zhou, just as a reminder, was lived around 1045 BCE. Okay.
yeah. So 伯夷叔齐 is older than that time. So, you know.
Okay. Thank you. Aman.
Everybody take notes
Oh, you're-
because there will be a quiz. There is sometimes a passage packs nothing but context. And this is one of those vignettes where if you know the context, there is so much going on in what could be seen as just a very terse little snippet of a tough moment in Confucius' life and one of his more clever students finding a way to ask the question of the master to make him realize his own answers, which is something Confucius was renowned for himself. This was a moment of the student performing in the act that he had learned from his teacher, drawing out the correct answer, but not offering it up by asking or pointing to a seemingly unrelated question, but would be understood to be related if you understood all of the context. And yet, for time frame reference, 伯夷叔齐 1200-ish BCE, but give or take another couple of centuries because the Shang dynasty is not really well documented. That's pre-Zhou dynasty. So this is long ago. The first or second dynasty of China, depending on who you ask. But it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea, not so much in all of the context that surrounds it. The idea that two of his students were deeply concerned about a dilemma their master was in, and one of them saw a route to coax out of the master an answer to the dilemma, not knowing necessarily what the answer was himself, but knew the right questions to ask the master so that he himself could see his way out of this dilemma, which is to not come down and take sides. This is a situation in which you do not take sides, because the only good that can be done is to pursue Ren and obtain Ren. And if being a partisan in some families' ascension squabble, you know, makes that pursuit impossible, then you have to forgo that partisanship. It's almost this really is almost like the hack for somebody who was stuck in Game of Thrones finding a way out, which, you know, maybe George R.R. Martin should have read his ancient Chinese a bit more. He could have given somebody a better out than most of those endings. That's my thoughts on this.
Very good. Well put. Any other comments, Quan?
Just a small historical reminder. Lady Nanzi survived the assassination attempt because when Duke Ling of Wei died in 493 BCE, she tried to install her own son, Prince Ying, on the ducal throne. But why I mention this is because Confucius was not the only gentleman in that family melodrama. Prince Ying was also the other gentleman because he knew his mother, okay, who was a very controlling woman, and he refused the throne and he said, well, give it to Prince. Well, I forgot his first name, but that young prince, what is the grandson of Duke Ling, would become known to history as Duke Chu, and that
Duke Chu, yeah.
yeah, Duke Chu will rule for maybe 5 or 6 years, and his father, Prince Kwai Kui, will come back, will rule for 2 years, and Duke Chu will keep on his interrupted rule afterwards for another 5 to 6 years. So I just want to mention the second gentleman, Prince Ying, in that family melodrama.
Thank you for that, Guan. Next up is Mark.
Thanks. I just had a couple of quick questions about this. One was the sense in which the last line is translated.
In which version?
Well, in most of them, but I'm not sure if Jason or at least one person had read a version where it was something like the master said he would remain neutral. Whereas a couple of the other translations seem to say the master does not support him, namely, I guess it would be the son who was in power and the father had come to. So just one quick question was about that, whether it's really not support him or it's would remain neutral. I don't remember which translation had that. The other question was a little different. It's about, because the context here is so important, and you've laid out the context so well, Jason, and explained it. But I'm also wondering about the meaning of it if you didn't know the context, and then how it could be understood and interpreted. And I'll just say the way I understood it without knowing the context was that when he said, did they harbor any regrets? And the indication was that they did not, implicitly, because they pursued goodness, Ren, and what regrets could they possibly have? I interpreted that to mean that the ruler, Duke Shu, that he was talking about, did harbor regrets, and that was a known thing, and therefore, because of that, he would not support it. That was my understanding, sort of independently of the context.
Yeah,
like if you found in a bottle.
Thank you, Mark. I think I like your interpretation. Okay, because Duke Chu must regret. Okay, so I think that's correct. And I think you point out a very important issue. I didn't really pay attention. The last sentence, the Chinese read called Fuzi, means Confucius, our teacher. 不为, okay, no action. Okay. He's not talking about 无为, that word Taoism, 无为. So no action. What does that mean? I'm not going to help, or I'm going to take no action, right? That's a big question. Okay. So 子贡's answer is 夫子不为, the master, no action. So I think you asked a very good question. I have to go back to ask 子贡, what do you mean? Okay, no action means he stay neutral or he's not going to help, right? So turn out, okay, that's my point here. I think he is not helping, he do nothing. Okay, that's I believe. And this one, I had to make my own point. I really criticize Confucianism, okay, in this point, because Confucianism, to me, the biggest defect, they pursue the virtue too much. And they care about, to the point, they care about the name. So they don't want to make their body dirty. So if you involve everyone, it will be dirty. So Confucius only think about the virtue. So he said, father should be love son, son should be love father. Then you should like boy and the sushi. No, I don't take it. No, I don't take it. That's a Confucius ideal world. And the reason I condemn Confucius here, his no action caused the death of Zilu. Okay, because Zilu take action. He tried to protect the grandson, the younger duke. Okay, because I don't know what's the reason. And then he died. And then I think the Peng Kui kind of killed him and not barbecue, just kind of like killed his corpse. So Confucius broke his heart. So he never eat the killed meat again. Okay, so it's a sad story. So I think it's all Confucius' fault, in my opinion, because you should take action, even you bury a bad name in the political situation. So that's my point. So
Thanks, Jason. I just wanted to ask then, if it's Wu Wei, then there's a connection to Taoism.
Confucius is not that far away from Taoism. Actually, here, for example, like previous one, if the situation is not possible, I do whatever I want to do. Okay, so that's kind of Taoism attitude here, right? You can smell it, some kind of this.
It's a form of inaction in a way. Yeah.
But then you seem to be implying that his inaction was also a form of action.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I don't know. But my concern is he could save Zilu, but he didn't.
You're muted, Jason.
The previous chapter is foretell Zilu's death. Okay, because we talk about the brave. Okay, if you fight with tiger bare hand, cross the river without help. Okay, death without regret. Okay, that's the situation Zilu is doing at this chapter, right? And the Confucius take no action. So that's the point here.
James.
Okay, I might be a little confused, Jason. I'm just wondering, the Shulu, and we were talking about this story as it took place over 600 years before, 600 or 700 years previously. So Shulu is not a contemporary of Confucius. Confucius had no action he could take in regard to Shulu. Is that correct? Or
No. I think you got confused. Two stories. Okay, one is the Duchess Nan. Okay, and right now you talk about the Confucius time. People here, Zigong, Zilu, Ranyou, Confucius, and the Duchess Nan. Okay, they all there, and the Duke of Wei is there. But his father coming back to claim the throne. Okay, so that's the story here. Okay, the old story is that's the difficult part to talk to Chinese, especially ancient Chinese, right? They didn't ask Confucius. Zigong didn't ask Confucius, will you help him or not helping him, right? Zigong asked 500 years ago, there are the two people called Bo Yi and the Suchi, okay, assuming everybody know the story, just like you talk about Donald Trump or you talk about George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, right? I don't have to explain. How do you think about Abraham Lincoln? Is he the good person even he got assassinated? This kind of question, right? Right. So Zilu said, okay, and Confucius said even they die, they pursue Ren, but die for Ren, they have no grade, okay? So Zigong draw the conclusion, okay, Confucius take no action or not going to help, depend on what you want to do. So I hope that's two stories, 500 years apart.
Okay, because somehow the new story got contaminated with the old story with this question.
Yes.
Being put forth. Okay, I got it. Okay. So the question is that can we go back in history now and take sides historically, being that the past has contaminated, the past perhaps can contaminate the present. And, and then Confucius says no action. And I just wanted to mention that I agree with Confucius. Just because you have circumstances that are kind of like reminiscent of past circumstances, or the ancient stories reflect upon the present. They're still just analogies, and you need to judge things from a modern or historical point of view. And I like the answer. They sought Ren and gained Ren. You know, they should have no complaint. Speaking of the ancients, so this I think should be Confucius's attitude, and to not be a partisan, just like many of us are not partisans today when we're asked about severe questions of warfare and politics and things like that, or religion for that matter. It's you can have no action in terms of letting history having took place, and wish it could have ended differently. I guess that's what a lot of us wish. We wish that maybe some of the things that took place here in the United States, we wish some of those things didn't take place. I mean, every school child, right? What if President Lincoln hadn't been assassinated, right? That question just haunts American students for years of their lives. So it's one of those perhaps, but on the other hand, this wisdom of let the history stand. You know, there was so much at stake for this father and son. Why would any father go to reclaim his throne from his son? You know, so it's like what a tragic story. What a tragic story. It's by the way, Seneca was a playwright, not just a philosopher.
That's correct.
And
right.
it's a tragedy worthy of Seneca, I was going to say.
Well put. Quan.
Okay, so I would like to say that the story of Su Qi and Bo Yi, practically 6 to 7 centuries before, put us in the right philosophical context, okay? Because Confucius mentioned those people. Well, Zikong asked the question to Confucius by mentioning those two people to put the whole story in the right context, meaning what is the pursuit of philosophy for Confucius, okay? And of politics too, because politics is only the practical application of philosophy.
Mhm.
So he mentioned Su Qi and Bo Yi to stress the importance of Ren, and I would say of personal responsibility, because maybe it's not clear in the mind of everyone. Okay, so I would like to repeat the name of each one in the family. Duke Ling of Wei is the grandfather. Prince Kuai Kui is the son, and Duke Chu is the grandson. And the Prince Kuai Kui has a very difficult relation with Lady Nan, who was the favorite wife of the old Duke Ling. So how everything started is that because old Duke Ling adopted so much on Lady Nan that he accepted to push aside his own son, Prince Kuai Kui, and to install the son of his son, the future Duke Chu, as the crown prince. And that's why Prince Kuai Kui tried to kill Lady Nan in order to take back his throne, because as long as this controlling woman is the favorite wife of his own father, he knows that he doesn't have any chance at all. And the irony is that it's Prince Kuai Kui who hired Zulu to protect his own little son in the future, okay? So Zulu is bound by honor to protect the little Duke Chu when Duke the old Duke Ling died. So he, according to the aristocratic code of honor, Zulu could not escape his duty. So he had to protect the little Duke Chu, and he died in the process. And I am also a contender for Confucius' right decision because at the height of philosophical reflection, his decision on the political plan was right because there was no need to interfere in that family melodrama because everyone is right. Everyone can uphold his position. Okay, the little Duke Chu has legitimacy because his grandfather, the ruling duke, named him as the heir. Prince Kwai Kwei has a legitimacy because he was the son of Duke Ling. And as I said 10 minutes earlier, Prince Ying, the own son of Lady Nan, who schemed for him to take the throne, was probably the only one who saved the honor of that family because he refused the throne that his mother prepared for him and say, you better give it to little Prince Chu. He will become the Duke Chu. Okay, so we have here a situation in which each heir has a certain kind of legitimacy. So the best for someone who is upholding a run like Confucius is not to act. And even if he's very sad at Zulu's death, Zulu acted rightly because in his position, he was bound by honor by the word he gave to Prince Kwai Kwei to protect the little prince who will become Duke Chu.
Thank you for that clarification. That actually was very, very helpful for my own personally for following the story. And do you have the movie actually? Do you have a link to the movie that you maybe could share in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
That would be
Well,
wonderful.
Can I comment on the movie for this?
Go ahead.
I would say, okay, personal opinion. This Chinese movie, first, beautiful make. Okay, the actor, the Zhou Runfa is the great actor, and the lady are beautiful. All the scenes are perfect, beautiful. Second, the story are all correct. Okay, and then one thing they did good. They put all the Confucius analog the line during the conversation. For example, for Confucius want to rush out, and you wake up the guy, Zai Wo, he's still sleeping in the daytime, and then he doesn't want to get up. He said the rotten wood cannot carve. So they put all the Confucius teaching during the daily life. But the problem is this: first, it's so slow, and second thing is they probably give you the wrong impression. Even everything is correct and beautiful, but probably give you the something wrong information. That's my personal feel. But I just want to share my thinking on this.
Thank you, and thank you for that that review of the your opinion of the movie there, and thank you for putting that in the chat, Juan.
Yeah.
Aman.
I love the saga of Zulu because it really is kind of a cautionary tale about misunderstanding Confucianism and misunderstanding the teacher's own teachings. Even he didn't see himself painting Zulu into a corner where it would wind up in his death in this situation. But I agree with Jason. He could have shouldered the burden because he was the favored for the kingdom. He decided to take no action and leave. And Zulu saw it as an opportunity to do good within a kingdom that the master had approved of just previously. So why would it be bad for me to take position in this great kingdom now?
Well, the answer was because you're going to get killed for it, because there is no good position for a good man in a badly run kingdom. And that was a lesson that we've seen iterated already a couple of times in the Analects, but here is the lesson. Here's where the lesson was taught to Confucius himself in spades by losing one of his students. The great redemption story that I don't think comes out. Zulu is not necessarily always a favorite of Confucius. He's kind of a slower student sometimes.
Sure.
But he does take this job, and he does it by all accounts very well and very according to tradition. So according to tradition and so wedded to the teachings of Confucius that at his death, when the guardsmen cut his hat's cord that kept it in place, as he lay dying on the floor, he took his hat, put it on, and said, "A gentleman always has his hat on in proper accord when in court." Those were supposedly his last words, according to Sima Chen, that he had learned the ritual of Li so well that even in death, he would absolutely hew to the propriety that he had been taught by Confucius. I think that it is, whether a accurate story or it is a beautiful parable of Confucianism gone wrong. When a student who almost had it missed one of the key lessons, which was it won't work in a kingdom that has lost its way. The kingdom must have its way first for you to have any chance of being a beneficial influence to that kingdom. Otherwise, don't be running in government. Work from a grassroots, work from the ground up, build a critical mass until that kingdom does find its way back to harmony, back to the Tao, and then be a minister. The beautiful thing, though, about Zulu is, although he gets kind of an ignoble end here, in the Tang Dynasty, he's posthumously given a title, and then again, I believe in the Song, I think his standing title is actually the Duke of Wei now. So he has a position as high as the Duke of Zhou, but for the Duke of Wei, for his time and place, because he was so good at following the rules of Confucianism, even if he missed one of the most valuable lessons in it, which was don't get involved if it's just a predestined outcome for it not to work out.
Wow.
I'm gonna go
Awesome.
play with my grandson, guys. I will see you
No,
all
that's
next time.
wonderful. And thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
closing.
it's
That was excellent.
AO1. You miss 1 minute. So go.
Yeah. So it's yeah.
Yeah, just last minute. Look like everybody did comment. I just want to make a last minute comment.
Sure, please.
On this one, because I always think Confucius should learn from Zilu because
Well, I thought this new format, just briefly, I thought it went well. I think we made as much progress as we actually normally do. So we would have had 2 separate groups, but we would have completed the second group of verses. So I think that, but Jason, do you have any comments about this, or anybody?
yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, and
Please.
then I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay. And I see Amon's given an affirmative response. James.
Yeah, my only comment is that I think by separating the the verses, we're able to concentrate on one idea at a time. I think everything is clear. The discussion is clear. We don't have the the discussion is not as variegated across different concepts and ideas. So it's much more, the meeting, I think, is much more coherent because of that choice.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I do plan on getting back to you about, yes, wealth is not in and of itself is not a bad thing, but the unethical pursuit of wealth is. I'll get back to you with some comments on that, because I have some notes somewhere. I just didn't have a chance to pull them up. But thank you for the challenge. And if I'm wrong, I'll let you know next week.
Well, it's not a question of absolute virtue. It's a question of what does Confucius actually say?
Say,
You know,
right,
you know,
no,
in
no.
813 or wherever else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, if anybody else has any comments, if not, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of our upcoming events. Quan, do you have, looks like you want to,
Maybe
something.
just a small thing.
Please.
7.15 is the historical illustration of the general principle that has been stated in 7.11. In 1711, I would certainly want those who approach affairs, etc.
When to
Yeah.
act, when to stand back. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if I read the last paragraph of point 11,
Yeah.
the master said that those who fight tigers with their bare hands, wade across rivers, and are willing to die without regret, I would not want their company. I would certainly want those who approach affairs with fearful caution and who like to lay careful plans for success.
That is a great connection. Thank you for that. That's a wonderful final comment. I'm very much appreciated. And thank you everyone for your comments. Thank you, Penny, for reading as always. Thank you, James, for reading. And thank you, Jason and Amon, for everything. And Quan and Mark for your comments. It's been I think that this new format, I like it. I think it is a little bit more focused. And I think once we get used to it, we'll have more comments as well. So we have some fantastic upcoming events here at 52 Living Ideas. Tomorrow evening, we have Comprehensivist Wednesdays. And our good friend Phil, who is really one of our better presenters, will be presenting on mimesis, the representation of reality in Western literature. So take a look at the website to learn a little bit more about what he will be speaking about tomorrow. I still need to read a little bit about it myself. The Gospel of John will be continuing with chapter 13. And on Sunday, we will have, actually Saturday, what do you have, Jason, planned for Saturday?
Oh, forget it. This Saturday, Pin is going to talk about, for the Halloween, we're going to talk about a Chinese a ghost story. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Very
the Chinese from the famous book called The Outside. English translation is A Strange Story from the Chinese Studio. Okay, so that's a overeducated, underemployed scholar. Okay, because the examination system, he failed. So he writes a lot of story, and most are strange story, ghost story. And so Pin is going to introduce this one.
Okay. I'll be looking forward to seeing Pin on Saturday. It's been a while since we've seen Pin.
He went to Taiwan and then get the COVID. So.
Oh, he got COVID. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear he's okay. I'm glad to hear he's doing well. So, so that'll be on Saturday, and look for that both on the 52 Living Ideas website as the meetup page, or as well as Jason's Asian Philosophies meetup. And we will be back next week, starting with verse 16. So I'm looking forward to that. And I thank everybody again for their contribution and their attendance this evening. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Bye-bye.
Take
Okay,
care.
bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye.